Happy Friday and welcome to the Friday Tech Bites show. I'm back again with the disastrous herself, Melissa. How you doing today?
I am getting ready for a lot of snow, apparently, Rick. How are you?
The disasters come to you. They
In
don't.
all forms.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. So, Melissa Palmer and Rick Vanover are back for the Friday Tech Bites, and she's on the East Coast in New Jersey, and I'm in Ohio. I just got a little bit of snow, but we want to know where you're from. We've got our two producers, one's in Romania, one's in the ATL, but let us know in the stream where you're joining us from. We are live on three platforms at the moment, Facebook, I think, YouTube, and LinkedIn, of course. I can never remember all three of them at the same time, but we've got an interesting topic today, Melissa, and what is that?
The scale out backup repository revisited, because we've mentioned the scale out backup repository a couple times, but it's one of those things that's always worth kind of checking in on and bringing to everybody's front of mind, so to speak.
Absolutely. The scale out backup repository is one of my favorite kind of things that we have at Veeam that we just need to keep telling that story and revisit it. So let's jump into it. So we got the slides up. So let's start really answering a big question. What is a scale out backup repository? So we've got some text definitions on the screen, but Melissa, you got a storage background. Tell me in your own words what it is.
For me, I really love the scale out backup repository because it's just flexibility, right? I want to be unleashed from my physical storage, so to speak. I don't have to worry about a device filling up or any of that good stuff. And I have the ability to use what works for me at the time as part of my backup repository.
That's an important bit right there at the time, because I feel that the scale out backup repository, and if I slip into calling it sober, that's our internal kind of vernacular, I apologize. But I feel like the scale out backup repository is a really good vehicle that maybe you change your mind. For example,
Yeah.
we've changed brands of storage products. Something's off lease and we're returning it. This is a technology that really, that first bullet point, transparent add and remove of extents. It's really, really cool.
Is it like virtualization for your backup repository almost?
Could it possibly have been? Maybe it is. And the reality is, why do we have this, right? And so, the original concept, believe it or not, of the scale up backup repository was, believe it or not, to address the phenomena of my backup storage is full.
That makes sense, right? That happens a lot.
Yeah,
it used to happen a lot.
It could have happened. Yeah. I mean, imagine the days where we had one standalone backup repository. And if it were to become full, then what do you do, right? You didn't want to have to make another repository with different jobs, and it just could quickly get messy. But it actually, we were able to extend the technology. Now we have the object storage is up in the mix, and there's additional use cases that, it truly is okay, you ready for buzzwords? Can we do that on Friday?
Sure.
Let's see here. Software defined, cloud ready, secondary storage system. Okay? At the
Very
management
nice.
level. Boom, boom,
Very
boom,
nice.
boom. We do that for free on Fridays.
I have a question for you, though. When did the scale out backup repository first appear in the world of Veeam backup and replication?
Oh my gosh, you throw me on the spot. I'm like the resident historian here. I'm in my 12th year.
I know it was before my time. That's why I'm asking.
So the scale out backup repository, I think, was born in the base release of version 9. And we're right now current GA for backup and replication is V11. That doesn't mean it was 2 years ago, because we had 9.5, 9.0, 9.5 update 4, we had, and then 10 and 11. So it worked through a long, I had to check myself on that, but I believe it was the base V9 that Sober was born. Good shout, good shout. Producers, just let me know that the map is ready. So in North America, we've got another from Ohio across the 3 streams. We've also got Florida. I was there yesterday. It was nice, a little bit rainy. And Canada's there. Good shout there. Nice green representation. Let us know what state. We'll light it up. And let's go over to EMEA. We've got the UK, Swiss, and Italy have all tuned in. And then we're going to come back over to South America. We got Brazil. Awesome. And then we're going to go the transatlantic 3-4 times over. Bad way to do a map. Let's go to Africa. And we've got Kenya, India, South Africa, and Iran checking in. So we've got the corners, got the big ones, Brazil and Canada, always a good one to light up the map. So again, let us know what country or U.S. state you're from, and we'll represent. And it's again across the 3 streams. Cool, cool, cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So let's take a look at a configuration. And this is actually one of the cool things I like, Melissa, because here's a scale out backup repository. This is how it was born. And the thought is, let's make this first extent. Now that's a kind of a, I don't want to call it a standard storage term, but it is kind of a,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, it's just like a unit, maybe is a better way to, a target, right? We have one extent attached. And then, and that first one is direct attached storage, but then we can get into the business of mixing and matching and frankensanning, whatever you want to call it. And then we can have network attached storage logically sit as part of this software defined, virtualized storage engine that is our backup storage. And then the third can even be a deduplication appliance, right? Mix and match, use what you've got. And the thought here is that when backup jobs are scheduled, their single target is that logical entity, the scale out backup repository. So the thought is it's pretty transparent. I'll send my backups into these targets and it will automatically put them where they go. And the reality is, by a default policy, we don't really care. Now we can configure it, and I'm going to get into that. But the thought is we can distribute across the different resources. And the most important thing, especially on the initial design concepts that went to the scale out backup repository, was, let's say, for example, one of these are not available. Yeah, I mean, storage never goes offline, does it?
Never.
Ever. Well, actually, there are legitimate reasons, like maybe you're doing a firmware update, maybe you've had a power supply issue. I can think of doing updates if it's attached storage.
It happens.
You can have something offline. The magic here is that when a backup job needs to run, you get into a situation where it'll just go to the other extents. And if those 3 jobs are going to run again, it's going to basically just distribute across. Now, there might be a situation where it needs to take a full backup, but I like being in a situation where you have a control plane that will give you the opportunity to still keep your backup job running. You will still have that restore point. It just may go to another extent. And I think other things go into the mix too. For example, if something gets full, right, then the same logic kicks in, right? Anything you want to add to that?
Not really. It just makes it really easy, right? Once you kind of, I say this way too much now, like kind of like set it and forget it, right? I load up my Sober with my extents. I'm good to go. I just send my jobs to that backup repository, and that's about it. And I think maybe, I hate to be a spoiler here, but maybe next week we'll take a look at monitoring some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really simple. It really is this simple.
Yeah, it is. It is a good construct. I've spoken to some organizations who have made, I spoke to one organization that made a very large Sober with many direct attached storage extents. I think it was like 8, and they were multiple double-digit terabytes each. And this was a couple of years ago, so that's not even an impressive number, right? But we can get pretty big, pretty scalable. And there's no built-in limit, by the way, to the scale-out backup repository, which is really cool, especially when you think about the cloud now, which is a good segue to some of these other things. Flexibility is a word I think that we like here. And when it comes to backup storages, I think that it's really, really important to keep the flexibility pretty central. So the Sober, the scale out backup repository, hits on all of these in a really important way. And it becomes part of your overall design, everything from centralizing where your backup storages go, how you're going to put stuff in the cloud, how you're going to have copies. And you also want to think about recovery. But I know, Melissa, you're thinking about designs all the time.
I am.
What's your kind of go-to when it comes to backup storage in general?
32110, of course, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's kind of really hard to answer that question because it depends, right? Every customer's got their own unique set of requirements, whether they be location-based or more of a cost based or, what have you. But the good thing about this flexibility is you can literally design a solution to meet any of those crazy requirements, whether it be a really, really super fast RTO or a super low RPO. There's a flexibility here to meet those requirements, whatever they are. So it's always like kind of everything's a little different, right? Based on especially RTO and RPO numbers. And the great thing with a solution like this is being able to meet those requirements and meet multiple sets of requirements using the same exact solution.
Speaking of different, Joseph on YouTube dropped in a question. He says, how come when I'm changing your question a little bit, Joseph, because I think this is where we're going with it. How come if I put my backups in AWS S3, there are thousands, millions of files, but if I put it on a NAS backup, there's just a few? Well, it's very important what's happening there, Joseph. For one, the move or the copy mode, which is going to come back up on the last slide of the demo when you guys get to pick maybe what I demo. But the move or the copy mode that are implemented have, okay, sanity check me here, Melissa. I made up a word. They have what I call cloud economic intelligence built in.
Yes. I think we kind of brainstormed that buzzword together. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Melissa approved. But
it is.
The thought here, Joseph, is that the worst thing we could possibly do is put a 1 terabyte file straight up into S3. And if you need to restore 1 meg out of that file, guess what your egress is going to be? Well, it's going to be something you see on your bill. So this shelling of the files into these, thousands or millions of 1 meg units is very much in your favor from an egress standpoint. And it's all sitting in one bucket in one folder. It's not like it just goes wild across the top. The other thing I'll highlight, Joseph, is if you've gone into the archive tier in AWS, so Glacier Deep Archive, you'll see that the unit size actually gets a lot bigger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 500 megs. Same thing.
I don't remember off the top of my head. It's bigger though.
Yeah, that cold retrieval, we want to pull out a lot just because we want to get a lot rather than wait for all these little shards to come in and put Humpty Dumpty back together. No, okay, you like the way I changed your question. Cool. So, no, Joseph, first of all, prop for looking at the files in the bucket and stuff like that. And they are different. So you were correct that you would not see VBKs and VIBs up in the cloud. Good shout. So as we go, good timing here, Joseph. Here's a visual of just that. Is that VBK file? Now this visual on the right is a bigger entity, and then you'll see these like smaller blocks along with their associated metadata. You actually get a built-in storage efficiency. This intelligent block recovery is really smart. It's not going to egress what it doesn't need to. If a piece of data exists in a VBK but then is sent to the cloud, you have some built-in storage efficiency. So this is really, really smart. So yeah, anything you want to add to this, Melissa?
No, you made a good point, Joseph. It is a little different than the VBK traditionally worked, but you get all the same benefits, right? It is very in the spirit of VBK. It's just developed differently to take advantage of the cloud and what's offered there. It's a really good evolution of how Veeam kind of has evolved over time, right? We're always sticking to the same core concepts and principles, but we're adapting them in different ways for the best medium that we're moving to.
Yeah, and keep in mind also, Joseph and others, that the same logic applies in Azure Blob, the Google object storage. And then there's an incredible network around the world of what we call Veeam-ready repositories with object storage. So off the top of my head, like there's Cloudian, there's Wasabi, there's Ceph.
There's a lot out there. And we have a whole list on Veeam.com of all our Veeam object-ready partners. And we have should I say the I word? Have we said the I word yet? Or should I wait to say that?
Oh, immutability?
Yeah.
That's a whole different classification. Veeam-ready object with immutability.
Yeah, there's two. So there's Veeam-ready object storage, and then of course there's Veeam-ready object storage with immutability.
Exactly. Good shout. And then kind of that final end of the day is this archived here, right? And it's meant to save money on your storage, but I need to make a little acronym out of this. But this is that write once, read never, but never say never type of data, right? This might be what we used to think of those long-term tape archives. The scale-out backup repository has fallen into this as a great engine in this regard too, because this is very inexpensive, that archive tier storage, and especially like Google's archive storage for example, is always online. It doesn't have to wait for retrieval. But the AWS one, they just announced at reInvent last month that they'll have immediate retrieval or something like that, instant retrieval. I forget their name for it, but a quicker retrieval option, right? So, all right, we're gonna put me on the hot seat here on the sober. So, Melissa, kind of read out the options for the
All
people.
right, so we have two options for Rick for demo for us today. We have advanced administration of your scale backup repository, which will cover those extents, sober sealing, and maintenance mode. And then we have placement policies for the different tiers of your data as it goes through the backup lifecycle, performance, capacity, and archive. So let us know one or two in the comments what you would like to see. And I don't think I'll stuff the ballot box this time. I'll be quiet.
You got to make your.
I'm going number two.
I think it's
this
going to be
stuff
number
is just
one.
so cool. I'm going number two. It's going to be the placement policies to show people just how simple it is to configure all this up and set it up.
So drop in either a 1 or a 2. Now
Let
we
us
have a
know one or two.
we
always are like opposites here, Rick. We're like, I think that's cool. No.
Yeah, I was going to put a number 3 in, by the way, for the audience. I was going to put a number 3.
Stay tuned next week for number 3, though, right?
Yeah, because next week it was more about monitoring the scale out backup repository, but we thought that's actually a really good standalone topic. So we decided that's going to be next week's topic, and Kirsten's going to join us on that show. So maybe one of the producers can know which 1 or 2 is leading, because I actually didn't get the stream up on my. Oh, 2, you called it again.
I sold it. I told you.
Placement policy.
Maybe it's like psychology. It's always the second one. Is it usually number 2? I don't know.
I think it's just whatever Rick doesn't pick is what is gonna what's gonna win. All right, so the placement policies. All right. So what we're gonna start looking at, and I'm gonna get my zoom on here. Let's pick a color, Melissa.
Pink.
Pink. All right.
Like you want to ask.
So in Veeam backup and replication, I have 3 scale out backup repositories defined. Okay, and I'm going to take the sober single instance one to highlight. No, what was it? Performance capacity archive?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Sorry. I'm
going to go with that's Azure Sober PCA.
Exactly. Azure
Rick
Sober.
is so good at naming the stuff in his lab. Like if you ever have to use, you always know. Versus my lab is literally a disaster and like has like names of Taylor Swift stuff in it and like everyone's like, what is this stuff? Yeah.
Delete. Yeah, this is a lab, so bear with us on that. So here's one scale out backup repository called Azure Scale Out Backup Repository Performance Capacity Archive. Go figure. So in here, what I have is this data management strategy built by definition of the scale out backup repository. So first of all, it all starts with a good name. And this particular one clearly self-documents that it's an Azure scale out backup repository with performance capacity and archive tiers built. Now, this is very helpful with a good name because when I make my backup jobs, Melissa, this is what I select.
Yeah, that's exactly what you say.
Yeah, so it's like that it's going there. You can get into tier 1s and you get into different names and tags and stuff like that. But at least for our uses, this makes good sense. Now, in this performance tier, I have this Exagrid in play. Now, this Exagrid on my on-premises backups is probably one of my better performant targets. I don't have like a massive direct attached storage system that would perform better than a purpose-built dedupe appliance like Exagrid. But keep in mind, at least in the Exagrid implementation, those nearest backups are kept on like a NAS share, so they perform different than what you might assume a backup storage appliance like dedupe to do. Now, what I could do if I wanted to is just put general NAS in there. So I have this FTB, which stands for, what do you think? Friday Tech Bytes.
Like full terabyte? I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, full terabyte. No, but anyways, the Friday Tech Bytes NAS share, I could have this as my performance tier. So I'm kind of sneaking in the other topic here. So the thought is when I make my backups, they can go to either one of these 2 targets. By default, it'll just randomly do it. Now, when I get into the different policies, I can then, first of all, get into this notion of data locality and performance. Really good point with NAS share and dedupe appliance. You might want to think about this performance policy. And the thought would be that the Exagrid, if I wanted to, could just hold the full backups And I'll zoom in here so you guys can see this better in a second. And the exagrid, or the NAS share, for example, could hold the increments. This type of config may be a way that I can get the different performance policies right for the different units, right? That might shove my storage efficiency really good on that exagrid. And then if this NAS is pretty fast but small, then my increments could be there. You got some options, Data locality, you'll put them together. All right, so this is what the audience chose. How do you set these different lifecycle bits, especially across the different storages? So the first question, and I'm going to have to get into some color changes here, but in the pink box, the first rule is, yes, I'm going to use the capacity tier, and I am going to take my backups to Azure Blob storage. That's not the archive, okay? Now, the important thing to note is I already set up the Azure Blob account, but it's very straightforward. You just find an Azure Blob container and you add it and you're good. Then 3-2-1 rule comes back around. Let's make this red because it's important, right? I'm going to copy backups as soon as they are created, right? So as you look through the scale out backup repository over the years, we've added capabilities, the archive tier, the copy mode, immutability, all these different things for currently implemented for AWS and S3 compatibles. But copy mode was really tight because you could take a backup, put it on that performance tier, which was that first step that I talked about, and then the copy mode would immediately put it in object storage. So you basically are having the 3-2-1 rule implemented by policy. That is really cool. Then that built on, and I guess I should have explained it before. Let's go into blue. No, let's go green. I'm surprised I didn't start there. The move mode. Move mode means after 7 days.
And that's configurable, right? We chose 7 days because based on our operational store window, we know that most of our restores happen within 7 days, right?
Exactly. And so if you're in the business of reducing your on-premises storage, this configuration right here will really, really help you. So 7 days old, and I should caveat this, but depending on how your jobs are configured, the way the chains may sit, we don't want to break a backup chain, okay? So the 7 days is if a complete chain is a candidate to be moved, it will be moved. And when we say move, this is back to Craig's question. It doesn't pick it up and move it. It's that shelling process that happens where the large files get represented as small objects in the cloud. And a question come in from Pavel right here. Can tapes be added part of the scale out backup repository? Oh, good question, but not currently. That's an interesting angle. It could be kind of an offline tier, that could be an interesting angle there, Pavel. Actually, on my whiteboard behind me, I even drew the archive tier. It is a little trivia, Melissa. I had it there for like 2 years on the shows and on the camera.
No one noticed?
Nobody noticed, but that's okay. Before we announced it. Good one there, Pavel, though. And then kind of most important, let's red, blue. Let's go to blue. Encrypt your data. I like to say encrypt your data in the cloud or someone else will do it for you. And
that is also very true.
Yes. So if you have backup data in the hyperscale public cloud, I'm recommending that you encrypt it. So just by defining the capacity tier right here, you have a lot of options going on. Now, we did mention immutability. Currently with Veeam, we don't have Azure object level immutability in place yet. Azure just had that go out of preview last month. Keep in mind, there will be a time where we have some news to share there. But if you wanted to have immutability in S3 compatible or AWS public S3, that is a property of the actual repository itself. So that immutability option is set in the bucket. All right, lots of zoom in. And then the last thing, kind of the ever after part of this data, and I think this is a color. Is that a color? No, that's not a color. There's one more color. I can't remember what it was on my Zoometry, but there it is, orange. And that's the archiving. So this is Azure Archive Storage. Now I have, again, configured it. I think 14 days was a little bit aggressive, but you get the point.
It makes a good demo.
it gets data in there quicker. 14 days, it could be 30 days, it could be something like that. So you have, again, very configurable life cycle here. Another question came in, and good interaction audience here today from Joseph. How does the retention policy in the backup job interact with move files older than the edit in the scale out backup repository? So Joseph, I think that's kind of what I was getting at. We're not going to move a file that will break a chain. Meaning if I go back right here, Joseph, sorry. This 7 right here, I'm not going to break the backup chain on the performance tier at the mercy of the capacity tier rules, right? So there's logic, there's handling built in for that. Good question, man. You guys are smart. Awesome. All right, well, that concludes our demo here real quick. So let's go take a look at the map. The producers told us that the map is ready, and another one in Canada has come back in. So, but we'll go over to Europe here, and we've had Spain join us. We've had Belgium and France join us. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I wouldn't be doing anything else on Friday night. And then in South America, we've had Argentina and Mexico join us. That's the big debate. Is Mexico South America, or is that North America? Is it Central America? It's like all over the place. It's not South, I'll say that. And then over in Africa, we had Cameroon. That might be a first. I don't know.
I don't know.
Might be a first on the live stream. And then one more question. I'll let you take this one, Melissa. Have you had Exagrid and NAS in the performance tier? How would that work with synthetics? Oh, good question.
Well, what do you mean? How would it work?
Well, I think what he's getting at, when I decouple the synthetic the full backup from the increments, how would the synthesizing work? Well, it would still work, is a short answer.
Exactly. You don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah. And the other thing I guess I would add to that, Paul, is if you're doing a lot of synthetic, well, I probably wouldn't do synthetic pools because I have a dedupe appliance, first of all. Might as well just do an active, but then you have to read it more. The accelerated data mover with the Exagrid does help us, so I may potentially have, I don't want to say broken that, but again, it's just a demo from what I have here in the lab. Good shout, Paul, but that's a great opportunity to test it in your own environment, that type of thing. Another one from Jagadish asks, how does the replication work here? Well, it doesn't. This is really for backup storage because the scale out backup repository is a backup target. Now you can put metadata on this repositories, but it's not really critical to that. So, and a last minute shout to Bangalore in India and Austria. So now, awesome, great interaction. Hey, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me here today. Appreciate it.
My pleasure always. And everybody, don't forget to tune back in next week where we're going to take a look at monitoring some of this cool stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, Melissa helped think of this great idea and then bailed on me. So she's not going to help me deliver this content, but we got Kirsten coming in for that. That'll be great. And then also Monday, Industry Insights, episode 79, Compliance Myth Busting, part 2 with Jason Buffington and Jeff Reichert. And that should be a good one. I heard the Monday show was great. And, big thanks to my the peer staff here, Mark in Atlanta, Katie in Romania, helping us drive this across the 3 platforms. Couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for the viewers. Have a great weekend, everyone. That concludes the stream today.